Rasputin? Oh, you mean Rumpelstiltskin? Okay. Is Mama still there? Okay. I guess I'll speak to her later. Okay. Um so once upon a time there was a girl who had long, long blonde hair that people said looked like gold. Yeah, sure, why not? There was a girl called. Okay, so Emma, she has long blonde hair, and she really wants to marry the prince, but she's just a farmer's daughter, right? Well, one day the king comes riding through her village to water his horses, and she hears about it, and so she urges her father to go to the king and boast about his daughter and her long, beautiful hair. And while he's doing that, she quickly throws on some of her best jewelry, but when her father stands before the king, he gets really nervous and he misspeaks and he tells the king that his daughter can spin straw into gold. And the king is intrigued. He asks the girl to confirm, is this true? Can you spin straw to gold? But she wants to win the king's favor, so Emma says, yes, I can spin gold from straw. But the king's no fool. So he decides to call her bluff and he proposes a challenge. If you can turn straw into gold, you may marry my son, the prince, but if not, you will be exiled, which means kicked out. Well, Emma, she's unable to refuse such an offer, so she accepts. And the king takes her to his castle and he locks her into one of his towers. And there in the tower room is a spinning wheel with a large pile of straw. And he says he'll return in the morning to see if she can actually spin this straw into gold. Well, Emma, she spends all night trying to think of some excuse or, clever way to get out of this situation. But as dawn approaches, nothing. She really starts to worry. And that is when a strange man appears. And he asks her if she has a wish. And she says, I wish to turn this straw into gold. And he says, I can do that, but you must give me your necklace. Well, the girl quickly takes off her necklace, and the imp sits at the spinning wheel, and he starts to spin, and he spins all of the straw into a large pile of golden thread. And then there's a knock at the door, and the imp disappears, and the king comes in, and he sees the small pile of gold, and he's amazed, but he's a little suspicious. So he moves the girl to a second tower, and this time there's a much larger pile of straw. Okay, and again, it's the same challenge. You spin that straw into gold, marry the prince. If not, you're kicked out of the kingdom. And yet again, just by morning, the girl, she waits, and again, there's nothing. She can't do it. But right then, that imp appears again. And this time, he asks for her ring. And so she gives him her ring. He sits down, he spins that much larger pile of straw into gold, and boom, disappears right at dawn, right before the king walks in, and he sees this larger pile of gold, and he's almost convinced. But for a final time, the king moves that girl to a third tower where there is a huge pile of straw. And he locks the door again. And yet again, just before dawn, that imp appears. But this time, the girl, she doesn't have any jewelry to give him. What can she do? Well, the imp, he smiles and he tells her that if she will give him her firstborn child, then he will spin the straw into gold. Well, Emma, she has no option but to say yes. So the imp, he sits at the spinning wheel and he spins that huge pile of straw into golden thread. And he disappears right before dawn, and the king walks in and he opens the door, and the king is amazed. He says, I thought you were lying, but you are for real. And the very next day, the girl is married to the prince. And on her wedding day, she smiles wider than she's ever smiled before. And her hair shines like gold itself. And a year later, Princess Emma gives birth to a beautiful baby girl. And later that week, she's putting that little baby into a cot when suddenly that little man appears again, that imp, and he says, I have come for what is mine, the baby. And the princess, she begs and begs, and please, no, don't take my baby, I'll give you anything. She offers him all the riches in the kingdom. She offers him everything, but he refuses. So she gets on her knees and she pleads, please, please, I'll give you anything. And she says, okay, if you can guess my name, I will not take your baby. But if you cannot, the baby is mine. I will give you 3 guesses. And then he disappears. And the princess, she's terrified. So she calls in all of her staff and all the spies and the soldiers or anyone who has a horse to go and scour the kingdom to figure out this little imp's name. And the next day, the first spy returns and he tells her, oh, okay, sure. Okay, Daniel. So the imp appears and he asks if she has a guess, and she says, Daniel? But the imp laughs. Wrong! 2 more guesses. And he disappears. And the very next day, another spy returns. But this time he says that he's heard villagers talking about a strange man who lives in the mountains. Now, No, honey. That would end the story too soon. A little too soon. Ah, okay, all right. Well, okay, in that case, the spy returns and says Rumpelstiltskin is this strange man's name, and the princess waits in her room, and at midnight the imp arrives, and he says, now your second guess, and he cackles, and he's gonna rub in his hands, and the princess smiles and looks him in the eye, and she says, Rumpelstiltskin. And the imp is amazed. I mean, he's so surprised that he faints, like, right in front of her, and Emma has him arrested and thrown in the deepest, darkest dungeon, and she lives happily ever after, and the end. Okay. Good night. I love you.